Hi guys, in today's show I will try to paint a kit similar to this one with just dry brushing. Anyway, I'll see you after this break. If you like the video or channel, please consider subscribe, like, share or comment. Thank you. Hi again everyone, Cake from CakePla. So in today's show, I'm gonna try reprint this Mecha Collection Domelaze with just dry brushing. I'm gonna clean this off, all this paint here, and I'm trying to repaint it.
A few moments later.
First of all, I primed this in complete black, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just dry brush on all the colors onto it, and it will be in different stages. This is one that I use the same method to do it, and it's actually quite nice, and I was dry brushing just with different layer of or different shade of blue. So with this one, I'm going to put on gray color, and I'm going to have different layer of gray color and maybe with a little bit of silver just to make a little bit of like a metallic look on it. Everything will be just dry brush. First of all, I'm going to dry brush a German gray onto it, and next I'm going to dry brush a light gray, and finally I'm going to do a dry brush of a silver color and just to pick up the edges. Now when I say dry brush, most people will say, okay, you make sure the brush is really dry when you run it onto your model kit, but with this one I actually wanted a little bit of color onto it. So what I am doing is I dry my brush, but I didn't dry it completely. So I would say maybe I'll leave about 10% of paint on the brush. So when I runs it onto the surface, maybe you can see it's actually leave behind some paint, but it's just random paint, and it's a very thin layer of very subdued layer of paint. It's not gonna be it might not be very visible unless you look close enough. This is my idea of how I paint this.
A few moments later.
You can see I've got the first layer done. I left behind some area which I'm going to put different color onto it. You can see there's a dark gray color, which is the German gray that I was using. The next stage, I'm going to use this light gray to brush on. Again, it's a dry brush, but it's not completely dry. It will have maybe 10% or 5% of paint. And so when I actually brush onto it, it will leave behind a little bit of paint on the surface, but it's not like a complete spray paint where the whole thing will just be completely gray, but it's just a subdued layer of gray, maybe more visible at the edges, like say in here. And because of the black background, it makes a lot of blemish not so visible, but instead, because of the slight contrast, you're actually seeing a layer of color, and with a sort of a dark tone in behind, it makes it looks more like a metallic kind of surface.
A few moments later.
You can see I've actually masked off some of the area because I'm going to put a white color on there. So this is the Tamiya white. So again, I'm going to use the same dry brush technique. Also, again, I'm going to need to put a little bit of paint on. So same process, basically just dry the brush off, but not completely dry. So when I brush it on, the surface actually collecting paint. But it's not a complete paint, but it's a partial paint where you can still see a little bit of the darker background on it.
A few moments later.
Now the next stage, I'm gonna use a silvery color. You might be able to use a lighter gray if you want to. The idea is to pick up the edges. Now again, it's going to be dry brush, but this time it will be the normal dry brush that people would familiar with, which is a very dry brush. when you run the brush on the cloth that I have, it should have nothing coming up. But when you run it on the parts or on the model, then it will register paint on the edges. So that's how I do it. It's not a lot, but you can see I probably end up putting too much silver on some area. I can cover that later on, but the idea is just to pick up the edges and not the surface. So you can see some of the edges start picking up a silvery color. You can use a white or whatever as well. It's up to you.
A few moments later.
Now, the final stage, I'm going to need to highlight a lot of the details on the kit. Now, this is crucial because when you put a solid color on some of the highlight area, it creates that contrast, so you can see the difference between very subdued layer of dry brushing and a very contrasting solid color on some of the details area. But it's only on the details area, like some of the small holes, or maybe the thruster, or maybe the beam cannon there. So I'm going to use the red color to do that.
A few moments later.
Finally, that's done. Well, almost done really. I haven't put in any top coat or anything. And you can see I probably can put a little bit more highlight or details on various places, but I even painted the turret into white color. I'm using dry brush as well, so the type of dry brush I've been talking about. And you can see the bottom. I actually quite like the bottom because it's like an alien ship where it's got some color on, but it's not solid color. You've got that background of different black and the edges with the silvery color onto it. It makes it more like a that's how I describe it, as an alien ship where it's been through a lot of traveling, a lot of space traveling and things like that, and it just looks a little bit different to your normal Gunpla. And I can show you the bottom of it, and you can see some of the edges are getting a lot of highlight and things like that. Anyway, I hope you like this technique, and maybe you can use it sometimes on other kits, probably on a smaller one. But if you like the show, please consider subscribing, like, share, comment, and otherwise I'll see you in a couple of weeks time. Bye!